second portion that we are going to talk about essentially your problems of tribal communities, right? In terms of problems of tribal communities, the syllabus itself basically gives us many different sort of aspects. The first aspect that we're going to talk about is land alienation, poverty, indebtedness, literacy. So this is your education. Okay. Now, tribal education, especially tribal education or tribal literacy, is an important 10 marker or 15 marker. Okay. When you talk about health and nutrition, we can go with tribal health and nutrition. Even this, I would say, this could be a 10 marker or it could be a 15/20 marker as well. There's plenty of stuff to basically touch upon these. And then land alienation, it could be a 10 marker, it could be 15 marker, 20 marker. How will you differentiate between a 10 marker and 20 marker? Okay, long answer. Okay, lengthier case studies. Substantiate more. Right? Substantiate more. Now, the way you want to go about attempting these questions is whether you want to have it in a point wise or sort of paragraph wise. I don't think those things matter to a great extent. But what really matters is whether you can give multiple dimensions within the same thing. See, for instance, if I want to talk about, let us say, issue of chronic indebtedness. Okay, chronic indebtedness. They are constantly in finding themselves to be in debt. Why do they have this debt? See, a lot of it is because of lack of self-awareness. They need money for many things. Okay, a lot of times it is just for consumption-related expenses. Today, roti, kapda, makan, consumption expenses. Okay, food, festival, marriage, social obligation, agricultural capital, many of these kind of things. Now, once they do need this money, what generally happens is that they go out to money lenders, right? With the money lenders, it is always an issue of exploitative credit. Now, the many of the tribals don't necessarily know what is compound interest. They will not be able to like follow up on the math. But once they realize that the interest rate has gone, sorry, the interest amount has gone to a great extent in comparison to the principal amount, they eventually have to start parting with any sort of asset that they have. So because of that, what? Loss of resources. This happens to a great extent, and this results in marginalization, pauperization of these particular groups, right? And also bonded labor, right? Bonded labor, we can even take a look at some of those examples. So try to bring in as many dimensions. So these are about many sort of dimensions, right? And in fact, creating so many such dimensions in this kind of a question is not going to be very difficult, right? Because you study tribes to a great extent. In fact, like if you have like one sort of a flow chart, you can basically cover so many different aspects. But I would rather say you try to utilize it in a text form, but then explain each and every one of those things in 3 to 4 lines, right? Each and every portion in 3 to 4 lines. Now, again, so if I talk about, so that was more about like indebtedness. Let's say go just talk about education. See, one of the things that you want to say about education is that is tribal education advanced? Okay, or poorer, right? So for this, you need to give me the status, current status today. In order for you to be able to say they're good or bad, you have to go with the socio-economic indicators. For instance, we also see some of the tribal states having the highest literacy rates, okay, especially in Mizoram or so. But when you look at some other states, Andhra Pradesh is it's got the lowest, right? It is less than half of them basically have, and literacy is see, being literate is not being educated, right? Literacy basically allows you to say that a simple sort of a sentence, signing of your name, and basic sort of arithmetic is something that you can manage. So even in that particular way, if you see only half of them in the, I believe this number is from the 2011 census. If you can find the 2021 census, you can go ahead and take that data as well, right? But I don't think you will be able to find it before means, okay? Or if it's going to take you too much time to find or mine for those, it doesn't necessarily matter. Recent stat, whatever it is, okay, if it is census data, you can definitely go ahead with this. Okay, also when you're talking about this, I always say, right, so you try to bring in more dimension. So within this dimension, you also introduce the dimension on the woman aspect. Okay, inequality. Gender is a important sort of a dimension. So for instance, ST men overall, 69%, not too shabby, right? It is not too shabby at all. But when you look at the ST women, that is less than 50. So that is 1 in 2 cannot illiterate. 1 in 2 are illiterate women. Okay, when it comes to the tribals. Now that is very, very sort of unfortunate, right? Because there are some states, for instance, look at Kerala as a state. It has got, what is it, 90 5+ sort of literacy. Okay, and from that level, you look at the tribal society as a whole, that is only 50% or less than 50%. That is, and in fact, if you go to 2005 census, sorry, 2001 census, it was approximately 34%, 35%. I'm just giving because I don't remember the exact number. This is in 2001 census or something. That is and that's kind of poor. So when you talk about the status, back it up with the stats, right? When you talk about the causes, the reasons on why exactly the tribal education or the tribal literacy levels are kind of poor, okay, go with multiple sort of dimensions. Okay, poor socioeconomic condition, lack of infrastructure, especially in tribal areas. In tribal areas, give some example. Okay, there is barely no bijli, right? There are no sort of teachers, and if the teachers are there, they probably don't care as much about the students, okay, because they are all. It's not that they don't care about those students, but in many places it's considered as a punishment posting, right? They believe a teacher believes that the teacher has immense talent in order to enlighten minds of children, but are being sort of like posted to distant, far-flung areas in which they don't see enough amount of enthusiasm that they share, okay, they have amongst themselves, right? So there is some sensitivity related issues. Okay, so this is more about cultural sensitivity. Cultural sensitivity training. Okay, illiteracy rate amongst the women and linguistic sort of a barrier. Okay, tribal languages. Okay, how many teachers could actually speak tribal languages if they don't really come from the tribal society? Okay, so many of these sort of aspects basically makes them a little more distant, right? When it comes to the feel for school and education, right? So that is something that you want to keep in mind as well, right? That is something that you want to keep in mind as well. In fact, I believe it was Elvin basically says, it is a situation, it is about poverty, right? It is about poverty. When there is poverty in the family, right, and when the issues, socioeconomic indicators are so poor, education is basically a luxury for many of the tribals. Elvin, so if you want, Elvin, very relevant, right? So Elvin basically says, education is a luxury. When you are in utter poverty, in utter poverty. So true, so true, right? So, when there is like, hand to mouth sort of an existence on a daily basis, education is probably the last priority, for the families. Okay, in terms of, but I would suggest, you focus more on this. Focus here. Okay, provide solutions because because you will be administrator. They want to know what exactly is it that you are going to do differently. Okay, what are the kind of solutions you have? Infrastructural development, Ekalavi model residential schools, local recruitment of the teachers from the tribal society. Like in AP, it is being done, right? In AP, it is being done, right? Teacher training. And what kind of training? Cultural sensitivity. See, for instance, how many times do we really see? So when you go to any school, right? Just go to your old school, you will see basically a lot of Sardar Patel, you see a lot of Nehru, you'll see a lot of Gandhi, you'll see a lot of the local sort of flavor as well. But how many times do we really have the tribal schools, okay, actually having the heroes of the tribals being sort of like displayed all over? How many sort of tribal folk stories are taught in school? How many sort of exhibitions do we have which basically showcases their culture? Okay, many of these things, exhibition of their culture, right? Why not have all of these sort of aspects? So try to come out, just try to be unique, innovative. Okay, now that also will help you to a great extent. Okay, in terms of student safety, see, for instance, a lot of the women who come, the girls who come to these tribal schools, there have been many incidents, many untoward incidents. Okay, they have been sexually abused. There has been abuse, verbal abuse, and many such incidents that basically makes them lose trust in taking making the girls or students go far away. Okay, it could even be physical abuse, verbal abuse. It could be sexual abuse. It could be emotional abuse, right? See, then you go on to the tribal health. So if you go to the tribal health, think about tribal health also. How do you sort of indicate what is the current status of tribal health? Talk about the exact status. Stunting, 44% of the children. right? Underweight, 45% of the children. Wasted, okay, 27% of the children. Life expectancy, right? So life expectancy 2011 status, or forget the 2011 status, you have 2016 data from a Lancet report, okay, for a Lancet report, and I believe it was 63.9 versus 67 for overall. Okay, for overall. Now that too matters because that is a big sort of a difference as well. So these kind of stats you can basically study and be able to sort of defend your answer on why it is good or why it is not so great. Okay, that I think could also help your case, right? So similarly, when you talk about issues, you write in terms of many different sort of angles, right? What are the causes? Okay, one of the thing is that you also try to make a statement about what is the tribal sort of way of life, right? In their way of life or the way they say basically see medicine. See, tribals, until you fall ill, literally until you are unable to move, they have this belief that they're not ill. Not only that, it is also could be supernatural forces creating it. It is because of supernatural forces, not because of deficiencies, not because of pathogens, deficiencies or pathogens. Okay, so these are something again you want to sort of keep in mind as well. Unhygienic practices. See, for instance, today there are so many NGOs providing clothes. NGOs are providing, let's say, clothes, but no, maybe no water, no detergent. Okay, and they end up wearing those clothes for many days, and which results in basically skin issues. It results in skin issues. So take some of those things. Okay, try to elaborate on some of these ideas, and I think that will add to a great extent. Lack of health infrastructure, especially in tribal blocks, especially in tribal blocks. That is also an important sort of component. See, in terms of government, so you have your NHRM, okay, National Rural Health Mission, sorry, NRHM. Okay, national health rule. Okay, so you get the picture, right? So you talk about many of these things. You also talk about the recent sort of initiatives. So when it comes to health and about these, for the tribals, you have some sort of a portal which is a swasthya. I think that adds a lot of value to them. There are many. It's a one-stop get all kind of information. Alek is an important sort of an e-newsletter. Even during your COVID period, they basically had a lot of information regarding what is happening in the country, which tribals, which area, what sort of health benefit has been provided, and so on and so forth. Right. The next sort of an important area that I would say is the development projects and the impact on tribals. So even in these sort of questions, always try to mention as many sort of okay case studies, show them, rely on को, right? It basically try to show how big a deal is the current, just show the magnitude of the issue, right? Magnitude, show the magnitude. So one thing that you basically see here is, tribal percent, tribal population is approximately, what is it, 8.6% of the population in India, but in terms of displacement, more than 50% of the displaced population. Okay, now you have the displaced persons, and you also have the project affected persons, right? I hope you guys understand what these are, right? The DPE and the PAPs essentially put together more than 50% of the tribes. Give an example. Polavaram Dam here, approximately 300,000 people have been sort of sort of moved from their homes, right? And a vast majority of them are tribals. Example, to give you example also here also there's like Koya is one such tribe, right? And so on and so forth. So impact of displacement, what happened to their economic, okay, what happened to their social, okay, what happened to their culture, okay, and all of these aspects as much as possible if you can provide, that will be absolutely great. Now you also should understand that in terms of the quantum of displacement, you have mentioned that, okay, so something along these lines, okay, but what are the basic reasons for displacement? Reasons for displacement, there are many reasons for displacement, multiple dimensions. What could be multiple dimensions? See, one thing is big based on projects. See, the projects could be dams, okay, mines, industries, even wildlife sanctuaries, right? Many of these, but it could be because of conflict. It is because of habitat loss, and so many other sort of issues. See, conflict is something in the Northeast, and so that is the reason I'm saying that in terms of displacement, also try to bring in as many different angles as possible. Another sort of a component in your answer, or important sort of a portion in your in tribal India, is really history of tribal administration, okay, and history of tribal or even forest policies. Okay, forest policies. Focus on the major ones. This could even be, what if it is a 10 marker? Right? What if it is a 10 marker? See, the reason I mentioned this thing is that it is a much easier way to write. So this is a question that could be easily handled in a 15 marker, or possibly better off in a 20 marker. But if it's a 10 marker alone, mention these as the most important. Now, 1865 is basically when you started seeing the customary practices starting to get sort of some amount of restrictions. Okay, eventually they start basically saying that some of the use activities have to sort of come down. Okay, the most important one basically is your Indian Forest Act, right? Indian Forest Act, you can mention policies, acts, all of these things gave, they basically played a very big role in sort of, ensuring that tribal ways of life had sort of changed to a great extent. And you have your National Forest Policy of 1952 and even the recent Forest Rights Act. Now, the thing is, I will also say you add two more of these. Okay, and one of that is going to be your 1894 Land Acquisition Act, eminent domain. See, eminent domain is an important aspect that you should know. Eminent domain, right? And the second one is also 80, this is 1894. So where would you fit it in? So you go basically here and you fit it in here. And when it comes to this, you also bring in this aspect, okay, which is essentially your FCA, okay, 1980. Okay, in fact, this is currently in use. Currently in use. Why? Okay, again, I want you to basically go and see what exactly is the new bill. Okay. Now, so I hope you're basically getting an idea of like what to focus on. Whether it is a 10 marker, if it is a 10 marker, these are the areas that I want to focus on. If it's a 15 marker, 20 marker, you basically want to elaborate a lot of these things to a certain extent. Okay. This is evergreen sort of a question. Evergreen sort of a question. Okay. Every other year, you basically see a question on Forest Rights Act. So if there is a question on Forest Rights Act, what are you going to talk about? See, whenever you talk about Forest Rights Act, it always helps to sort of break down the problems or the rights into multiple different kind of rights. See, one is your land rights. So when I say land rights, it is basically approximately 4 hectares, right? 4 hectares. Okay, you can claim up to 4 hectares, which is approximately 10 acres. And even if you don't have documents, there are certain ways in basically do it. When I say use rights, this is more about grazing, using of the ponds, right? And even try right to protect and conserve. Tribals can conserve. Tribals can actively shape conservation because they're part of the local community. Local community. Now, I would say this is an important sort of a question. To be honest, this is actually a very, very sort of an important question, and for a certain reason why. See, don't get too technical into this particular section, that particular section, right? Sections are okay, but the more important thing is to talk about the important sort of assessments here. Now, if I have to sort of elaborate on some of these areas, see, what is Forest Rights Act? Ending historical injustice. That is the maksat, right? Injustice. Okay, ending historical injustice. So that is an important sort of component that should be part of your answer. Why is there historical injustice due both during your British time period and also post that? Since even independence, we've started noticing that we have, even after independence, we did not change many of the policies, right? Many of the policies were never changed, right? So what happened is that the tribals who were the kings of the forest or the lords of the forest, who took care of the forest, lived in the forest, all of those basically started changing from your 1800s. And since then, it has basically resulted in marginalization of those groups, pauperization of those groups. That is something that we have to really understand. Now is the time to basically give them back the rights to the forest, okay, to do certain aspects in the forest and ensure that there is also, they conserve and protect just like how their ancestors have done it for a very, very long sort of a duration. Is it working well? Okay, that is an important sort of question. Does it work well? So in terms of right to protect and conserve, so this is a case study. Okay, case study, Silent Valley, Carter society or Carter tribes, okay, they actively protect and they work as in ecotourism, okay, Carter tribes of, and there are these hornbills, okay, they're protectors of hornbills, and every single time there are, safaris or any sort of tourists who basically come to check out, the hornbills and the local, flora, fauna, and all of that, the Carter Society or the Carter Welfare Association, something along those sort of groups are going to get some sort of a royalty from the tickets, right? So basically, so they need to protect this animal so that there is wealth coming into their to them as well. Okay, one second. Give me a second. Right, so this is about right to protect and conserve. You can actually add a case study here, okay, and you basically see the Carter Society basically acting as and the Carter Society here, the members here basically acting as eco-tourist and guides in these sort of these dense vegetation, right? So this is a great sort of an example because they're not only sort of like protecting the place, also protecting the local fauna, the animals, right? So that is a great thing as well. So this is something that you could probably touch upon as well, right? Along with this thing also mentioned that it also helps in development of the forest dwellers, right? It helps in building trust between the tribals, okay, and the government, right, and the forest department, okay. It can also help, especially in those areas where you have a lot of left-wing extremism. It can basically help negate or at least reduce the land-related conflicts, okay. It can actually bring down underdevelopment. It can actually bring down Naxalism, right? Many of these things are examples as well. Apart from that, also you bring in some case studies. See, a couple of case studies that I want to give you is in Gadchiroli, okay, in certain places here, and also in Chandrapur district, okay. You basically see when the communities were given more of the ownership in the bamboos, and growing of all of those things, you only started seeing a lot more increase in the productivity of the forest. Okay, and that too in a very, very short period. Similarly, in another place in Amravati, you basically start seeing that there has been regeneration of the degraded forest lands. So two great examples on how it works. There are many such examples, but I think a couple of examples on how it works. Okay, now when they're talking to you about, let's say, issues, rather, you talk about what are the problem issues, right? A lot of people actually file for those the land, but they may get, so if you've asked for 10 acres, but you've got only one. Even that is considered as a success. But in fact, 9 out of the 10 acres have not been given to the tribals or the local communities, either the tribals or the other forest dwelling sort of communities, right? Forest bureaucracy not being very responsive. That is another one. Okay, there are committees that are supposed to basically sit more often, use of technology. The committee that is basically sitting more often should basically approve or disapprove, right? So all of those things are basically there. So you probably understand the implementation challenges, right? But this is a very, very good act. Okay, it can be a landmark sort of a measure to really sort of reverse the historical injustice that had been meted out to them, right? So that is something that you would probably want to keep it. Okay, at the same time, you try to give a very sort of an impactful conclusion. How would you sort of try to conclude this? So you could basically conclude saying that this has basically enormous economic gains can come from here, ecological gains can be gained from here, and even social gains can be gained from this thing, okay, both from individual perspective and from your forest related perspective. And primarily the reason why I'm telling you this thing is that forest right acts works for both forest and for the tribals. So this is also about the forest. It is also about the rights of the tribals and other forest dwellers. So I think something along those lines